So now we're going to transition into our second panel and focus on our second blind spot, which is measuring AI adoption. So this panel specifically is going to focus on measurement, right? And a topic that comes up quite frequently is that adoption is easy to claim, but really hard to prove. And seat counts, and license reports don't really tell you anything except who logged in. Do they tell you how the organization changed or shifted their mindset or thinking? Most likely not. So with most generative AI pilots showing really very little measurable return, and what really is the focus nowadays is moving not just from adoption, but really creating real value from AI adoption. So without further ado, let me introduce our impressive team. We've got our moderator today, Jesse Carrillo, who's the founder and principal of Carrillo Advisors. And he is also the former CIO at Hines and at the Howard Hughes Corporation. Joining him is Stuart Appley, who's the founder of Bay Tech Advisors and one of my fellow members of the U.S. PropTech Council board. He also worked as the global lead of digital tech solutions at CBRE, and he was the CIO at Shorenstein Realty Services. We also have joining us Anand, Bora, VP of Engineering Delivery, our host CloudNuro, and we have Tran, an AI field CIO and CTO and executive advisor at Captivix, who has led enterprise technology across healthcare and life sciences. Jesse, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Alice. I appreciate you. All right. So again, we're limited on time, but we have a lot of cool information to convey here. So we're going to get started. We're going to start with Stuart. Stuart, Robbie mentioned it a little bit earlier in his 10x, 10%, keynote, which was a lot of good information there. And I've also seen it from my perspective that there's a lot of AI pilots happening, which, we equate to the 10%. Folks are just kind of trying to figure out how to bring into their current processes. And a lot of the big AI players are touting just how many users they have. Everybody's competing again, with how many users they have. But I also get a sense that most of these organizations are not really seeing the big transformation effect yet that maybe we all are expecting, that maybe we've been expecting for the last year or two as folks has been tinkering with AI. So just wanted to get your sense, Stuart, on what you're seeing as you're speaking to clients and advising some startups as well on that lack of transformation yet.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jesse. Absolutely. I'm seeing the exact same thing. And it's a myriad of issues, right? But all around governance and AI governance is a big thing. As we know, going from a pilot is not the same thing as production, right? A pilot usually doesn't have the same guardrails around it. And the proper way and what people are really seeing now is that both on the cost side and the value side, they're not well prepared. They don't have their act together. So if you looked on the cost side about, having proper governance about how you actually go from pilot to real use, costs are all over the place right now. People are having a hard time understanding what is the real cost of AI from a workflow perspective. What model do you use? It's moving fast, the cost of tokens. And people aren't really well set up to say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to do this workflow. Costs are coming down, but people don't know what they're going to be when they actually put this into production and actually use it. And doing it in a pilot is not the same thing. And then on the value side, it's the same thing. They're not walking into it with the proper governance of saying, well, first of all, and Manny and others had mentioned this on the panel before about you don't just automate bad processes, right? The value of AI is truly transformative, and you need to look at your workflows and really understand, take a step back, redo the workflow, like where can you truly get rid of friction, and then actually making sure that you can measure that and the value of it. So did people just take 5 steps and before now it's 3 steps? Right? It's truly a lot less time than it was before. But so both on the cost and the value side, there truly is a better need for measuring and for getting your arms around what those truly are, and then making sure that everyone's aligned and agreed to when you actually roll those into production, so you're not caught off guard. So I'll just start off with that and interested in any other comments.
Right. Before I ask further comments, just curiosity. So, when you were leading CIO teams and as an advisor, do you, I'm assuming you had frameworks and you had, measurement sticks, if you will, for the previous, technology shifts that we had. Are you advising folks to kind of create their own frameworks when you think about POCs or, proof of concepts or proof of values to make sure that you know what the output is and the value that you're getting out of the POVs? Because I think a lot of times, as consumers, we just download and start playing around, right? And
Right.
we really don't
Right.
know, what we think we want the value or to be at the end. But as an organization, it's very important. So just, did you have some of those frameworks, and is there any out there that maybe can be helpful?
Yeah, and it's a balance, right? I mean, having worked, being in the Bay Area and worked for VC and being more, forward thinking is one thing, but then taking that to reality in your company, right, is hard. And CIO, and you've been CIO a long time and a visionary in the industry, we've dealt with this before, right? This is actually no different than some of the other transformative technologies that have hit us and before. And people need to understand that, yeah, you want to be able to encourage playing with it, encourage understanding it, but you need to use your same guardrails that you used before, whether it's developing a business case. And like you, I mean, I dug up recently just dozens and dozens of business cases that we had to do before we did major spend and technology initiatives to make sure that everyone was aligned with what we were trying to achieve, where we're getting value, and what the costs are going to be, and especially in real estate where you and I had worked, right? I mean, every dollar spent is an ROI, NOI, NPV analysis, so you don't need a different framework, to be honest. I'm advising people to take your same frameworks that have been useful, if they have, and apply those to AI and be open with everybody in what you're trying to achieve and what the value is for the company.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate you, man. Any additional thoughts, Khan or Nan, as we get started?
What then? How do you assess ROI? Because I guess as you said, you come from a real estate background where ROI is paramount. But in AI today, we don't have that visibility yet. So how do you envision this going forward?
I mean, yeah, it's again, it's no different than how we would do ROI before, right? It's really understanding what is the value that you're bringing to the company. And so there's a lot of different ways that AI is bringing new value. But if you look at just kind of the basic level, it is workflows and taking friction away from workflows, right? So there is a way to measure that, and you need to at least have everybody agree to what is that measure. You might be able to reach customers 5 times faster, let's just say property management, right? And people, hey, I've got issues, and now your backlog is, 2 days of backlog or whatever it is. Now, how do you bring that backlog down? What does that mean? It might be, tenant retention, or that you're spending less time in doing your financials, and therefore you can do your, account payable or receivable, and a lot will spend more time to bring in revenue into the company. So having those metrics and understanding them in advance, and then be able to measure them with governance tools like this, is really critical.
Okay, just adding
Thanks, Stuart.
onto the,
Okay.
I just want to add a small bit to it. From what I envision, this will vary across sectors. This might not be very consistent or coherent for one particular sector. There might be different parameters, metrics. I know in the productivity assessment, the ROI assessment will be completely probably different and the same in some ways based on the sector.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, every industry is going to be different. Every company is going to be different. And you have to understand what are those value triggers for your company, but then understanding where AI really brings those value. And it's not just cost and efficiency. There is business growth, and but you do have to take that step back and work with everybody to look at that and where can we bring value to the company, and just write it down and then track and measure.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks, Anand. So again, this is a great segue, Khan. We've been talking about measurements. We've been talking about productivity. Everybody touts this, AI is going to increase productivity. Again, Stuart and Anand, we talked about, this is kind of what we've seen in the past with, robotic process automation. Manny mentioned that, move to the cloud, the iPhone, and so in your opinion, what makes the measurement of productivity so difficult, maybe to start, just a little bit of theoretical, and then, what's different this time? Are we at a different way of thinking about productivity with AI than maybe in previous technology shifts?
So thank you, Jesse. And yes, the productivity paradox in AI adoption, we're all fairly familiar with, is definitely a critical question that I think everyone is asking. And frankly, we should feel a sense of deja vu here, right? As you highlighted, we have heard the exact same promises of this frictionless efficiency, where the speed of individual tasks often increases, and yet the widespread corporate ROI and macro level economic gains, remain somewhat elusive. But here's the core reality I see. Productivity in general is frequently treated as an absolute victory. you know, wave the flag, right? However, in business, I think productivity is some sort of a vanity metrics, unless it is translated into a financial offset. I think we kind of touched on that, just now. So what makes measuring AI productivity so uniquely difficult? So I have two perspectives, and fairly basic. First, AI software is fairly non-deterministic, right? The exact same prompt that can yield entirely different outputs each time, and it get bursty, at time. So that make the traditional benchmarking impractical, right? The second perspective I have is the work we're trying to accelerate is highly complex and fast changing every second. So to get past the hype, a little bit of a reality check here. We need to also measure the broader that macro metrics such as cost per unit of productivity, for example. And also remember, speed does not equate to saving. And so if AI makes your engineering team 20% faster, for example, but your cloud infrastructure bill decreased by 40%, you haven't improved productivity. You're just subsidizing engineering speed at the expense of your gross margins. So to me, true AI productivity require tracking where that save time actually goes. If the reclaimed hours are not reinvested into some sort of revenue generating activities, that productivity gain is just an illusion on the balance sheet. Now, speaking of illusion, dare I say, let's address the massive blind spot for technology leaders, the hidden downstream cost of fast but flawed output. If that rapid code, introduces security vulnerability and tech debt, or even cloud inefficiency, the downstream costs for testing, refactoring, and computing, I think will spike exponentially. So AI would create that faster than ever before. And we must look at that total cost of ownership of the entire AI delivery pipeline, not just some hands-on keyboard time. And then the second part of your question, I think, is what makes AI different this time around compared to earlier tech transformation like cloud or RPA. So in my opinion, it is not just about automating some sort of fixed workflow or data storage, right? It's really about managing a dynamic ecosystem of technology and business capabilities to actively solving a set of problems, possibly in the context of an end-to-end use case or business case. I think Stuart even touched on that. So when AI save hours on a routine task, for example, don't just dump that time into writing more feature. And this is very typical, right? And try to deliver faster, more with less. That's an old cliche. Reinvesting into some sort of infrastructure optimization or cost modeling and cloud efficiency that fit for purpose, overall, holistically. So if you measure AI productivity simply by just counting how many features a team member or developer ship per week or per month, you're not accelerating. You're probably just automating the generation of tech debt. And so I guess my final point here, Jesse, is that ultimately AI productivity cannot be measured with the micro metrics of the past. True AI productivity show up sometimes exclusively in the macro metrics, the holistic metrics. So
Awesome. I kind of laughed to myself. I never expected the tortoise and the hare to be an analogy for a startup. You actually want to be the hare sometimes, because again,
yes.
right, I love what you said about speed. Yeah, you can generate a lot of, garbage, a lot of stuff if you don't do it right, and you can really increase your cost. So I appreciate that. But yeah, you made me smile at the tortoise and the hare analogy, the paradox, and it is a paradox. All right. So, any other thoughts before we move on to another question? That was awesome.
The productivity is an interesting one. I remember one CEO told me, yeah, you got 5% here, 10% there, 5%, 10%. That doesn't move the needle, right? And so you really have to look for the bigger gains, reimagine workflows. Just a little productivity here, productivity there will not move the needle.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, I love that. Move the needle. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Robbie, I think mentioned it earlier. You have to act like a CEO, right? Don't act like a technologist. Act like a CEO, and be thinking about what would a CEO care about. And a lot of times they don't care as much about the technology. They care about the results and the productivity. And how do we measure it? And using tools like CloudNuro, there's one way to measure it. As that's kind of what we're hoping folks are going to do is measure more and be able to quantify productivity a little bit better, maybe with this next evolution of transformation, maybe that we haven't in previous, transformation efforts. All right. So Anand, real quick, as has been discussed quite a bit today, AI gets embedded in more solutions and adopted by more organizations. It feels like the world now runs on prompts and tokens, right? This concept of tokens. And I keep reading, hearing about runaway costs, which many organizations are struggling with. And you and I have chit-chatted about this in the past, and you've mentioned this, and it's been a new word that's out there, called token ops. And so I'm wondering if you could just spend a few minutes and maybe, give our audience a little bit of an impression of what token ops is, and why maybe some more organizations should be really focused on this now as they start embedding AI into their workflows and work streams.
Okay. I'll start with what Khan mentioned, that if tracking AI is a very non-deterministic analogy, because AI itself is non-deterministic. It gives you results different every time, right? So here we are dealing with something which is non-linear, non-deterministic, and deeply sensitive in what kind of context you are providing it. So it will give you the best output in terms of what context you provide. But I think as humans, we don't have that cognitive ability to tell machine what exactly to do. It is kind of an evolving process. But during that evolution, we realize that we have burnt our AI tokens already. So we have to be very cognitive. And I guess it's because it is a democratic process now. Everybody has the product. They are using it their own way. So it becomes kind of challenging for any enterprise, even non-enterprise, to track tokens. Okay. So I would bring an analogy where you think that software delivery was a very important feature. Even today, it's an important feature, and the front line of that is DevOps. Similarly, for assessing cost for SaaS or cloud, we have something called FinOps. So we follow that baseline, that benchmark. So you can think of token ops as like a discipline of making every token visible, measurable, and optimizable. So we say it in that way that we look at the token and we tell you that how much efficient that token is going to be for you. Okay. So that's the idea of token ops. We are building that framework or we are building the discipline where the enterprise or even the end user knows what he is doing with the tokens. Okay. He is cognitive of that. And of course, it requires a system to be built. It is not just that, it can be taken up from somewhere and put into the system. It has to be kind of a platform, a kind of a mechanism, a framework, which tells the enterprise that, okay, you use these methods and you use this stack, and it will give you the best output for your AI tokens, right? In terms of token ops, I break that generally into 3 different layers or 3 different features, okay? So what it does is it gives you complete visibility. So complete visibility of our AI system. So any enterprise using different kind of agents, tokens, AI services, or anything which relates to AI or runs a LLM, you have, or wherever tokens is consumed. So It can be department wise, it can be user level, it can be at different levels in an enterprise. So the token ops framework or structure gives you that, where who is using what kind of token. Okay. So the next one is runtime optimization. Runtime optimization is a very technological heavy system. So at every level in an LLM, you have different tokens getting consumed, different prompts being written. So whatever different variables you do as an end user, that is tracked and that is optimized. So here we call it like prompt optimization, prompt caching, semantic caching. There are many different algorithmic terms where I don't want to go. But the idea is that as a layman, if I write something, the machine should understand me the right way without consuming a lot of resources, whether it is in terms of hardware or in terms of the LLM calls, the different API calls, or whatever. So we have to be efficient there so that the end user knows that he is getting the best output out of what he is saying, right? The third thing is governance. For an enterprise, governance is very important. Their own policies, their guardrails, their budgeting, and tracking their different PII data and different kinds of entities are there. So these three levels or these three features form the token ops stack for us, right? So you can say that token ops is not an optional entity anymore. It is the infrastructure for AI, for any kind of AI system. So that is what we have been building. That is what we are targeting to achieve in a wholesome way, so that any organization or enterprise knows what they're getting, how they can track what they're getting. And this is very important because eventually in the long term, it will give a structural cost advantage to the enterprise. So uh, they will realize that it will keep compounding. They'll keep saving money over a period of time. So that is the idea of token ops. Okay. One small example I would like to give you is, let's say in today's world, when if you consider FinOps, any any CFO, CIO, they will track their cloud costs based on, based on tagging, based on right sizing, different kind of optimization techniques. But right now, everything we have for, let's say, tokens or AI is very haphazard. It's like we are building one feature at a time and it is at different level. There is no technological stack which tells an enterprise, okay, you take this, we will take care of your token usage all across the board. We will give you the best value of your token usage. We will give you the best value of your AI service which you have been using. So, for example, I'll give you another instance where a lot of AI geeks or AI gurus, like Andrew Ng, if you follow his tweets, he says that now every work of me is being done by an agent. So imagine if every employee in a company says so, what kind of money an enterprise will be burning, right? So that becomes very, very important for an enterprise to have kind of a token ops stack which helps them save money, optimize token usage, and be very cognizant at all levels. So these are the things. This is the most, you can say this is a conglomerate of system which we intend to build and provide to the end user. This is the token ops.
Okay. So in our world, again, Stuart and I came from commercial real estate, and we always talked about middleware. We talked about energy management in our buildings, and a lot of startups were building these middleware platforms to try to aggregate the data and give us more transparency, visibility. So basically what we're saying is building a middleware, building a gateway that gets smarter and
Yes.
really understands how you're leveraging your AI stack, and it gives you that visibility of which prompts are costing you which amount of money, how to optimize it. And in some cases, sounds like potentially take those prompts and reformat them
Yes.
so that they're more optimized, and maybe even change which models, having the right guardrails, but maybe even in the future get to the point where it can actually decide which language models are the most effective, cost effective, and value driven, is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, because it's like, it is like a daisy chain method. If you optimize your prompt, if you have, so as an AI user, right? If I'm not trained to write the exact prompt which the AI is expecting, right? So at the source level, if we get something and we optimize it in such a way that the machine understands what the user wants, also the machine doesn't use enough resources or burn money of the end user, we will give him the best system and the enterprise will get most value for what they're spending. right?
Great.
And
Interesting.
another bigger reason is that most companies suffer with, the overrun of the budgets, right? And they need to be informed. They need to be aware of what is happening. So token ops becomes a very, very important parameter.
Interesting. Con, Stuart, any thoughts?
So I'm going to take a different spin on this, Jesse, just to make it a little fun. So we're a few weeks away from the kickoff of our football season in the US, right? For those of you who are big football fan out there, me being one. So I would look at it as if AI adoption is a fourth quarter football games, right? Most organizations, I think, are currently in the first quarter, which with about maybe 10 minutes left on the clock in a 15-minute quarter there, right? So I guess the point here is that the game opening kickoff is over. You know, the initial script plays are done, and the hype is faded, and the field is muddy. You know, teams are running into heavy resistance. You know, the defense or dirty data and whatnot. So you cannot win game by counting, micro yardage or individual plays. So stop guessing your ROI and deploy that automated governance if you can to capture that overall macro metric in order to improve how fast your team can deliver and unlock the new revenue stream.
Nice. He reminds me, I'm a big football fan as well, a Raiders fan. And back in the old day, Al Davis, the owner, wanted to go deep every pass, every play he wanted to go deep. So that, I'm hearing you say, just go deep every play after the first 10 minutes. That's how you win the game. Although, some of the old time teams would go, what is it, three yards in a cloud of dust, but, we're going to go long, we're going to go deep. So I appreciate that. All right. So we're winding down a little bit on time. And so, like I said, we always like to end, with a takeaway. We want the folks listening to us and hearing this later to kind of walk away with something. We talked about budgeting, we talked about transparency, we talked about optimization of prompts, potentially making that a middleware. So, what is one takeaway that you'd like to leave the audience with? And I'm gonna start with Anand. What is one takeaway that you love to leave, and then I'll go forward with Stuart, and then Khan, you're gonna wrap us up.
I guess best adoption, best way to adopt AI would be to be cognizant about our system, right? We as an enterprise, we keep just subscribe to a survey and start using. We ask the employees to start using, but we don't put controls right away. We don't add systems right away because we are very cognizant of the money, right? But eventually it comes back and hits us, just like in security. So that should be our takeaway from my side.
Okay, great. Stuart?
Balance the innovation side with the true and always been there governance side, right? Nothing has changed. You need to be able to have governance over what you're doing and ensure the value and the costs, but do it in a way where you also enable people to innovate and try things. And so just understand there is a difference. Enable trying, but then making sure you really have that governance around the models is a great example. I mean, you don't want to use Fable Opus 5 for just basic questions, and it's gotten a lot more complicated.
All right, appreciate it. Khan, bring us home.
All right. So, I would say in the context of true AI adoption, we cannot measure the technology of tomorrow with that micro metrics of the past. So true productivity in AI nowadays show up in the macro metrics, so faster feature time to market and so on, and lowering the total cost of ownership. So ultimately the goal shouldn't be to deliver code faster. It should be to build that pipeline for smarter growth, in my opinion.
Wonderful. All right. I appreciate all the insights and thank you for your time, and appreciate everyone listening to us. Alice, I'm going to pass it right back to you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.